That can be, I think for some readers, it can be a bit jarring.
Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we have some excerpts from a really fascinating text. It's called Simplified Research in the Interpretation of Firas Al Moneer.
Wow. Simplified research.
Yeah, it's kind of a catchy title, right?
It is.
But, we know that the listener who sent this in is looking for a deeper understanding of Islamic theology.
Yeah, and they've chosen a really interesting figure to guide them, haven't they?
Yeah, Al Moneer, he's not your typical scholar. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his work, it's not a traditional commentary like you might expect. It's more like, it's almost like reading his personal research notes.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a collection of inquiries,
Yeah.
As he's going through the Quran, grappling with all these complex theological issues, he's writing down his thoughts, his questions, even his doubts.
So it's like we're getting to peek into Al Moneer's thought process as he's wrestling with these ideas, analyzing and reanalyzing the Quran.
Exactly. It's like having a conversation across time with him.
And that's what we're here to do today, right? We're going to explore those connections, those aha moments, and sometimes, even the contradictions that he uncovers.
Because there are some surprising contradictions in there.
Yeah, and that's part of what makes his work so thought-provoking, right? He doesn't shy away from challenging traditional interpretations. In fact, he often kind of turns those interpretations upside down.
He really does.
Yeah.
And that can be, I think for some readers, it can be a bit jarring, but it's also what makes him so interesting.
So let's dive into our first theme here, which is unveiling the layers of divine power.
Okay.
And Al Moneer starts off by presenting this really unique perspective on the divine hierarchy.
Yeah, he does. And it might challenge some of the preconceived notions that people have about this topic.
Yeah.
So he posits this hierarchy with Allah, with God at the top. And then below that is Rabbuna, which is often interpreted as Gabriel.
Okay.
And then even below that is the Mala al-Allah, this higher council of angelic beings.
Right.
What I think makes Al Moneer's interpretation so compelling is that he doesn't just kind of state this as his opinion. He really delves into the linguistic analysis of the Quran to support these claims.
So he's looking at how the words are used, how the language is structured.
Exactly. He's not just pulling this out of thin air. He's looking at the text and he's saying, look, this is what the language is telling us.
So give us an example of that. Like, how does he use that linguistic analysis to back up his ideas?
Sure. So, for example, he makes a distinction between the words Allah and Rabbuna based on their usage in the Quran. He argues that Rabbuna is sometimes presented not just as a messenger, but as a separate entity, an entity with its own powers, its own responsibilities, and even its own will.
So it suggests that God is working through these layers of divine power as opposed to kind of this direct intervention.
Right.
How does that sit with you? I mean, that's a pretty big idea, right?
It is. It is a big idea. And I think it raises some really important questions about, things like free will and destiny.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If God is working through these intermediaries, how much agency do we have? Al Moneer doesn't necessarily offer simple answers to these questions. I think what he's doing is he's encouraging us to really think about these things in a new way.
Yeah, he's pushing us to wrestle with these big ideas.
Exactly.
He also uses very specific examples from the Quran to illustrate his point.
Mm-hmm.
For example, he analyzes those verses that talk about milk and honey being provided to humans by the divine.
Oh yeah, that's a fascinating one.
And we might read that and just think, oh, okay, milk and honey, these are symbols of abundance and nourishment.
Right, but he takes it a step further.
Right, and he looks at the specific words that are used, the difference between tanzil and inzil, and he suggests that, tanzil refers to this kind of special sustenance that's imbued with this direct energy from God, whereas inzil refers to more ordinary nourishment.
Right, and it might seem like a minor linguistic difference, but to him, it's significant. It's a clue. It's a way of uncovering these deeper layers of meaning that are embedded within the Quran.
It's like he's saying, don't take anything for granted. Every word matters.
Exactly.
Pay attention. Let's move on to our second theme, which is rethinking prophethood and sainthood.
Okay.
Moneer presents a very somewhat unconventional view of prophets.
Yeah.
He divides them into these two distinct categories. The prophets who receive and deliver divine law, the Sharia, and then those whose primary role is scientific discovery and advancement. So it's not just about their role as messengers or lawgivers, but also their potential contributions to what we might even consider scientific knowledge.
Exactly. And he uses specific examples from the Quran to back this up. I think it challenges us to re-examine our assumptions. It's not just that they were recipients of divine revelation, but that they were also active seekers of knowledge.
Yeah.
That they were combining faith with what we might call, scientific inquiry.
And it makes you wonder, what other figures in the Quran are we potentially misinterpreting or limiting in our understanding?
Yeah, that's the question that Al Moneer really makes us ask.
Does he challenge other traditional narratives in this way?
Oh, absolutely. He contrasts figures like, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Moses.
Okay.
He points out that Mary's selection as chosen, is based on her spiritual purity, whereas Moses' selection is linked to delivering messages and words. Each figure has a unique role to play, and that maybe their contributions extend beyond what we've traditionally imagined.
Yeah, and maybe we need to broaden our view of what those roles could be. And what do you think, listener? Does this open up any new ways for you to think about these stories in the Quran? Let's move on to our third theme here: navigating the complexities of interpretation. Now, Al Moneer has a very specific method when it comes to interpreting the Quran.
He does.
One that emphasizes both the literal and the contextual understanding.
He does, and he prioritizes reading the text literally, but not at the expense of context. And also, he places a lot of emphasis on linguistic analysis.
Oh, okay.
Really, dissecting the nuances of the Arabic language, the subtle ways that meaning can be conveyed.
So he's bringing all these different layers to the process of interpretation.
Right.
It's not just a simple matter of reading and understanding the word.
Exactly.
And this leads him to challenge a lot of traditional interpretations that he finds to be illogical, contradictory, or just simply out of sync with the overall message of the Quran.
He does, and he advocates for critical thinking.
Yeah.
He's really encouraging readers to engage with the text actively.
Yeah.
To not just blindly accept interpretations.
So he's giving us permission. He's even encouraging us to question, to think for ourselves.
Right, exactly.
And he even takes on some of those, more challenging or even controversial verses.
Oh, yeah.
That a lot of scholars, kind of shy away from. For example, there's a verse that's often translated as "kill the polytheists wherever you find them."
Right.
And obviously that's a verse that's been, used to justify violence and extremism. But Al Moneer argues that, that interpretation is completely at odds with the Quran's emphasis on no compulsion in religion. And that verse needs to be understood within its specific historical context and not as this blanket justification for violence.
Right, and that's something he does really well. He brings that historical context in, and he says, look, you can't just isolate a verse and interpret it in a vacuum. You have to understand the circumstances in which it was revealed and its relationship to the broader message of the Quran.
So context is key. He's reminding us.
It's crucial, yeah.
And this approach, this emphasis on critical thinking and nuanced interpretation is something that he carries throughout his work.
He does. And it's so refreshing to see that.
He even encourages his readers to constantly refine their understanding. He acknowledges that even the most learned scholars can make mistakes.
Right. He emphasizes the importance of ongoing learning, ongoing reflection.
And it's not just about, sitting down and studying the text, but it's about bringing your whole self to that process.
Exactly. He emphasizes the importance of personal experience and reflection in understanding the Quran.
Yeah.
And that leads us to our next theme, which delves into Al Moneer's personal experiences.
Okay.
Because, he doesn't shy away from sharing his own story, his own struggles, and his own evolution in his understanding of faith.
So it's not all just theoretical. He's bringing in the personal.
Absolutely.
He's lived it.
Yeah.
And his life has been anything but ordinary.
Right.
I mean, he's had encounters with different Islamic sects. He's transitioned from a more conservative background to a more liberal interpretation of Islam, and he's even experienced discrimination and exile. And he's incredibly open about this process. For instance, he talks about his time living as an undocumented immigrant in Europe,
right,
facing that constant threat of deportation. I mean, it would be understandable, if that experience led him to bitterness or anger.
Absolutely.
But instead, he talks about how his faith provided him with this sense of calm and a trust in God's plan, even in the face of uncertainty.
And that's a really powerful testament to the way our personal struggles can, not just deepen our faith, but also lead us to question and reinterpret what we thought we knew.
It humanizes him, right? I mean, it makes his scholarship relatable. It shows us how faith can sustain us through, incredibly difficult times.
Yeah, it does. And it also leads into the next theme that we wanted to explore.
Right.
His practical guidance for contemporary Muslims. Because Al Moneer doesn't just dwell on sort of theoretical theology.
Right.
He's also very concerned with how those principles translate into action.
So he's bridging that gap between, abstract concepts and everyday life.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes, ethical conduct, social responsibility as these crucial aspects of being a Muslim. This isn't just about individual piety. It's about how our faith should guide our interactions with the world around us.
So it's not passive.
Yeah.
He's saying true faith is about active engagement. It's about striving to make the world a more just and compassionate place.
Exactly.
What kind of practical advice does he offer? Like what kind of things does he talk about?
Well, he covers a whole range of topics, actually, from, marriage and family life to financial management to, our responsibilities to the wider community. For example, he emphasizes the importance of mutual respect and love in marriage, viewing it as this partnership built on equality and understanding. He also stresses, financial stability through hard work and responsible spending, not just for personal gain, but for the well-being of the family and the community.
So it's about taking those core Islamic values of justice, compassion, responsibility, and applying them to every aspect of our lives.
Exactly. From our personal relationships to our financial decisions to how we interact with the world around us.
Right.
It's about recognizing that faith isn't confined to rituals and prayers. It's about living those principles in a way that benefits both individuals and communities. It's about asking ourselves, how can I, as a Muslim, contribute to making the world a better place?
And that brings us to a question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
How does Al Moneer's practical, action-oriented approach resonate with your own understanding of Islam's relevance in today's world? How do you see those core values playing out in your own life and community?
And as we continue to delve into Al Moneer's insights, keep in mind that his interpretations are often intertwined with his personal journey and experiences. He's not just presenting abstract theories. He's sharing a lived understanding of faith that has been shaped by both joy and hardship.
And he's inviting us to do the same.
He is.
To engage with the Quran actively.
To question, to reflect, to really allow those teachings to shape our own unique journeys of faith.
And that's the beauty of it, right?
That is.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're all on that journey together.
It strikes me that Al Moneer's approach to Islam is both deeply personal and universally relevant. He's weaving together his own unique experiences with these timeless teachings and encouraging us to find our own individual paths within that broader framework.
What's so compelling is that he doesn't shy away from the complexity of faith. He acknowledges the struggles, the doubts, the questions that inevitably arise when we grapple with these profound concepts. And he encourages us to embrace that complexity, to see it not as a weakness, but as a necessary part of our spiritual growth.
It's like he's saying it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to question, to wrestle with these ideas.
Right.
In fact, that process of questioning and seeking is what strengthens our faith and deepens our understanding.
Exactly. And he reminds us that even the most revered scholars can be wrong, that interpretations can evolve, that our understanding of the Quran is a lifelong journey, not a destination. This open-minded approach is incredibly refreshing, especially in a world where religious dogma often leads to division and conflict.
He seems to be advocating for a more humble approach to faith, recognizing the limits of human understanding and the need for constant learning and growth. It's not about clinging to rigid interpretations, but about being open to new insights and perspectives.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to one of his core messages, the importance of knowledge, or ilm, as it's referred to in Arabic. But for Al Moneer, ilm is not just about accumulating facts. It's about a transformative process that changes our hearts and minds, that guides us to live more ethically and purposefully.
So it's not just head knowledge, but heart knowledge, a kind of knowledge that inspires action and leads to a more just and compassionate way of being in the world. Would you say that's at the heart of his message?
I think so. He sees true knowledge as a catalyst for both personal and societal transformation. It's about connecting our intellect with our spirituality, allowing our understanding to guide our actions, and working towards a world that reflects the Quran's values of justice, compassion, and peace.
And that leads us to a final lingering thought for you, listener. As you continue to explore Al Moneer's writings and your own understanding of Islam, he often emphasizes this idea that true understanding leads to positive change. How might this call to action inspire you to approach your own learning and engagement with faith? How can you translate your understanding into actions that benefit yourself, your community, and the world around you?
Yeah, and it really is about that connection, isn't it, between our inner world and our outer world.
It is. It's about recognizing that faith isn't something that we just kind of keep locked away in a box. It's something that should inform every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, it should radiate outwards.
It should.
And influence how we interact with the world, how we treat others, how we make decisions. And I think that's what Al Moneer is getting at when he talks about, this idea of ilm, of knowledge, right? But for him, ilm isn't just about accumulating facts and information.
Right.
It's about this transformative process that changes us, that changes our hearts and minds, and that ultimately guides us to live more ethically, more purposefully.
So it's not just head knowledge, it's heart knowledge.
Exactly.
It's a knowledge that inspires action,
right,
that leads to a more just and compassionate way of being in the world.
And I think that's really at the heart of his message.
So he sees true knowledge as this catalyst for both personal and societal transformation.
Yeah, it's about connecting our intellect with our spirituality,
right?
Allowing our understanding to guide our actions,
and working towards a world that reflects those core Quranic values of justice, compassion, and peace.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful vision to strive for.
It is, and it's a reminder that this journey of understanding, it's not just about us as individuals, right?
No, it's not.
It's about our communities, it's about the world around us. And
I think that's something that Al Moneer emphasizes time and time again. It's not enough to just, read and study and contemplate these ideas in isolation.
We have to put them into practice.
We have to.
We have to let them guide our actions, and we have to work to create a world that reflects those values.
And that's a challenging task.
Oh, it is.
But it's also an incredibly rewarding one.
And I think it's a challenge that Al Moneer would want us to embrace.
I think so too.
So listener, as you continue to explore Al Moneer's writings and your own understanding of Islam, keep this in mind. True understanding leads to positive change.
Let that be your guiding principle.
How might this call to action inspire you to approach your own learning and engagement with faith? How can you translate your understanding into actions that benefit yourself, your community, and the world around you? We hope that this deep dive has given you some food for thought, and we encourage you to continue exploring these ideas, to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving to live a life that is both meaningful and impactful.
Because that's what it's all about.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And we look forward to diving into more fascinating texts with you in the future.